All right, we're gonna get into pre-Columbian contact. We're gonna notice that we have a trade going on between the west coast of Africa and the east coast of the Americas. Um, this trade will also be the one that sparks the Middle East. Them heading into the Middle East, which would bring Itza, your Tupi, and your Algonquins. Different of these maritime Indians who were going over there trading their cocaine and their corn, their different peppers and different spices that came from the north. Let's get into it. Right now, we are in the book Ancient Ocean Crossings. We're in the chapter on papyrus and parchment of the Mediterranean and West European records. It says, despite the frequent assertions on the contrary of the West, there are traditions from ancient and classical times concerning ocean voyages and oversea islands, according to the 40th century AD Roman writer Rufus Festus Avienus in Ars Martyrium. Carthaginian and Melco, see below, claim to have crossed the Atlantic in 4 months during the reign of Augustus Strabo, suggests that the New World existed in the sea before Europe and India. The narrow Atlantic concept of Straits and Mallows have been described in chapter 1, and such Roman philosophers and historians and geographers such as Lucius, Anicius, Seneca, Plathyrus, Lucolius, Materius, Ploetarius, Gaius Julius Solonius, and Pomponius Mela advanced the notion of land to the west of the Mediterranean. The Roman epic poet Lucian Marcus Asinius Licinius in 3565 averred to just prior to the conquest and the death of Alexander the Great of Macedon, had planned to take his forces westward into the Atlantic to circumnavigate the globe to conquer the New World, a notion also contained in epigrams collected by Seneca the Elder in the first century AD. But Alexander's counselors are said to have assured him that there was nothing beyond the sea, and that in any case the ocean was too holy to be crossed by ships. Pliny the Elder spoke of a frozen sea, which was called the Cornicia Sea, that lay a day's sail from the Thule or Iceland. So basically, they headed up north and they hit that Greenland, Upper Canada area. And if you go at the wrong time of year, you ain't doing shit. You almost gonna need a boat called an icebreaker. Pliny the Elder spoke of a frozen sea, which was called the Coronea Sea, and it lay a day's sail from Thule, or Iceland. In about the AD 100, Plutarch and Martial quoted that the Carthaginian Sectus Salius to the effect of the far over brine and Isles of Augean, Laos, 5 days' sail west of Britain, and that there were towards the Somerset there other isles uh, equidistant from the Britain and from one another. The island natives told that on one of these islands, Cronius had been confined by his father Zeus. Some had proposed that Chronoland, sometimes spelled Gronland, from Cronus, is the origin of the name Gronland or Groenland, rather than Eric the Red having coined Grainland or Greenland. The 10th century, in fact, Cronland as the Isles are mentioned in two documents of the 830s, a century and a half before Eric going to Greenland. Plater continued his account. Demetrius Tharius told circa AD 84 that he himself by the emperor's command, made a voyage of inquiry and observation to the nearest of the deserted islands, which had few inhabitants, all scared persons, never molested by the Britons. The other side of the outermost shores of the world are here. To the great continent by which the ocean is fringed, the voyage about 5,000 stays, 612 miles, made a rowboat from Ogea or less from the other islands. The sea was slow of passage and full of mud. From the streams of the great mainland discharged, forming olive tracts and making the sea heavy like land, perhaps coagulated, particularly frozen seawater and the Iceland volcanic ash. Thus were supposed Greeks living in the outer continent. Celia also reported that every 30 years the Carthaginians outfitted an expedition to these North Atlantic islands where Cronius was a prisoner of sleep, and the members of expeditions revealed others who had sailed and fared to leave the middle arid passage of easy living. Cyrus Gordon, a Semitic linguist and historian, collected all intriguing suits of the comparable accounts of the Greek language. He pointed out that the Pompous of Chios mentioned a Aramis continent outside the old world, inhabited by exotic people living according to the strange lifestyles that once sent a fleet of to the Eastern Hemisphere. The 40th century BC philosopher Aristotle, or more likely a later member of his school of the pseudo-Aristotle, noted that the Carthaginians sailed 4 days outside the Straits of Gibraltar to a rich tuna fishing ground, probably the Canaries, Sahara banks of Lanzarote, the sea outside of the Pillars of Hercules and Strait Gibraltar. They say that the island was discovered by the Carthaginians, desolate and uninhabited, having wood of every kind and navigable rivers, admirable for fruits, and beside their distant several days' voyage from them. But when the Carthaginians often came to the island because of the fertility, and some even dwelt there, and magistrates of Carthaginians even noted that they were punished with death those who sailed to it, and destroyed all these inhabitants. At least the should spread the report about it. Okay, the Carthaginians came to our island and became because of the fertility, and some even dwelt there. The magistrates of the Carthaginians even noted that they would punish with death those who should sail to it, and destroyed all the inhabitants lest they showed spread a report about it, or a large number might gather together to the island in their name and get possession of the authority and destroy the posterity of the Carthaginians. Versions of this tale were also given to D. Mercabilis. I ain't even going to try to mess with that. The marvelous report, circa 40th century BC, author unknown, which mentioned defense force and many fruits by Statius Sibosius about 40 BC. The first century BC historian Dioscurius Scythius, Diordius Sirius of Sicily wrote the vast island of an ocean in many of the West Africa, a mountainous land. All right, y'all, we back. You know what I'm saying? Daddy duty. Saying he over here beating me up when I'm trying to read. The versions of the tale were also given. Okay, we read that. Okay, we were Silius Darius of the Sicily wrote that the vast land and the ocean, many days of the West Africa, a mountain land nevertheless possessing a beautiful plains and navigable rivers, and the inhabitants living in well-built homes and were irrigated groves and gardens, and thus the country lay undiscovered because it was a great distance. But wrote that Caesarius, the Phoenicians then, while exploring the coast outside of the Pillars of the Straits of Gibraltar. For this reason, we have stated the trade and the colonization, all while sailing around those shores of Libya, Africa, were driven by strong winds and a great distance out into the ocean. And after being storm tossed for many days, they were carried ashore of this island. And when they observed it, the facilities of the nature which caused it to be known to all men. Consequently, the Tyrians and the Etruscans, all the time they were the masters of the sea, including the display of the colony to it. The Carthaginians prevented their doing. So partly lest many inhabitants of the Carthaginians should move there because of the excellence of the island, and partially to have ready in the plate in which they seek refuge against the incalculable turns of fortune in case some total disaster should overtake Carthage, for it was their thought too, since it was the masters of the sea, they would be able to move household in all the islands to that unknown with to their conqueror. So we're gonna start right there. It says of Atlantis we find a chain of mountains known from the most ancient times as the Atlas Mountains, which the name Atlas, if be not from the name of the great king of Atlantis, as if be not its origin, how come that we find the most northwestern corner of Africa, and how does it happen that the time of Herodotus there dwelt near the mountain chain that people called the Atlantes, probably a remnant of the colony from Ceylon's island. How come it that the people of the Barbary states were known to the Greeks and the Romans and the Carthaginians as the Atlantes, the name being especially applied to the inhabitants of Ephesium and Belima? Where did they get the name from? There is no etymology in the east of the Atlantic Ocean. This is on Lenormand's Ancient Histories of the East, page 253. Uh, Look at Atlas on the shores of Africa, the Atlan, the town on the shores of America. These Atlantes living along the north and the northwest coast of Africa, and the Aztec people from the Aztlan in Central America, and the ocean rolling between the two worlds called the Atlantic. The mythological deity called the Atlas, holding the world on his shoulders, and an immemorial tradition of this island, Atlantis. Can all these things be a result of an accident? Sometime after establishing the first Atlantean colonies in the northwestern or the north central Africa near the Mediterranean seas, of course, the Atlanteans observed and started the colonies in close proximity to the present location of Egypt. And in the fact that Egypt itself, we know from the story of Atlantis that the Egypt was colonized by the first civilized people of Greece, yet the Carthaginians actually had every opportunity to initiate a colony in Egypt 1,000 years before the Egyptians and Europeans did. Then we must remember that it wouldn't be very surprising if before the Carthaginians and Egyptians and Europeans colonized Egypt, that the earlier group of Atlanteans likewise found Egypt to be desirable and laid out farms and villages throughout the Egypt, and did so along the Nile River and in those parts of Egypt nowhere near the Nile. As well, again, Atlantean colonies may have reached well into the interior of the parts of the Africa, and may have existed in the presence of location of the Chad or Niger. That was in chapter 8. The number of the leagues which the Spaniards traveled in Florida in a fight with the Indians of the coast. The Spaniards penetrated into Florida as far as the fountains were the Chacuga, Cahubas take its source of the rivers to ascend into the Ammonia, where we made the first embankment. As far as these fountains is 300 leagues, and from the province to the sea 500, so that these extend altogether a distance of 800 leagues, which our men traveled during 3 days. The Spaniards recruited themselves. They saw the last day about noon coming to a place full of reeds, 7 boats which advanced towards them. There was in the first a very large and very black Indian, on the aspect very different from those who inhabited the interior of the country. The barbarians of the coast are black in this manner because of the sun, and they are warmer than elsewhere, and because they are continually in the water which is salt. For the land being dry and sterile, they are obliged to fish in order to subsist. When the Indians have approached the caravel near enough, they placed himself on the prow of the vessel, and in his voice full of haughtiness too. So they got hold. All right, that's the Organic Copper Collective, and the Ohio Player. Come follow us on Instagram or just check us out over here on YouTube. We got some little books and whatever for sale, but it's not about that. You know what I'm saying? We always gonna push this shit out for free because this ain't the education of our people is not for sale. I know it's people's time and whatever, but you ain't always got to get a dollar out your people.
Phoenician people or Canaanites are well known in the history, not to just because of their civilization, also because of their ability to sail the Mediterranean Sea and even apparently well out into the Atlantic Ocean. In the 7th century BC, the Phoenicians actually sailed around the continent of Africa, which is considered an incredible feat for those times now. But the Atlanteans certainly would have gotten a good long laugh for hearing of information like that. For I do believe the Atlanteans of 11,500 years ago, far long before that time, to be realistic, were indeed sailing around the entire world. It is my belief that the Phoenician civilization originated from the civilization of the Carthaginians of the Northwest, displayed 64 photographs and 25 artifacts, which I had brought with me from America in the library of the Assemblée Nationale. I had investigated this unexpected phenomenon for many years, but in the car, I was able for the first time to present my findings to Africans who obviously know what a Negro is and what he looks like. My point of view of the ancient American sculptures could be consistent through a representation of Negroes was amply confirmed by everyone, including the president of Senegal, Leopold Sedar Senghor. Clearly, Negro representation in America can be identified as early as 1200 to 600 BC, at least in terracotta and other materials known at present. This time would extend the whole world from the reign of Ramses and later the Libyan ruler Thanasis in Lower Egypt and the epic of the Ethiopians and the Nubians domination of Egypt, including the 12th dynasty of the Negro Queen Taharka. It would, of course, also include the period of Assyrian thrust against the Phoenician city-states in Asia Minor, since nobody could believe the Negroes ever tramped all the way through Siberia and crossed the Bering Strait in Alaska to arrive very much later in the warmer parts of America continent. Only acceptable interpretations of their presence above mentioned, which above the translated voyage and phenomenon, the sooner or later will have to be explained at this point. It might be appropriate to recall and then I like to come down here into the languages. And right now, we are here where it says the Maya, the ancient people of the peninsula of the Yucatan, who claimed that their civilization came to them across the sea of ships from the east, that this direction of Atlantis, that the Maya succeeded to the Cholulans, who were an era terminated 1,000 years before the time of Christ. For them, they received the alphabet. It comes to us through Bishop Landa, one of the most early missionary bishops who confessed to having burnt a great number of Maya books because of they contain nothing but the works of the devil. He fortunately, however, preserved for the prosperity of the alphabet of the people who persist. And you have the for the A, your three different A's, your capital A, you have your three different versions of the B. There's only one version for C, the T, the E, the H. As you see, these are all the beginning of letters. And each one give you a different sound. From the shoe to the U to the she. You have ma, me, or ma down here, which will always be the two ovaries. Diego de Landa was the first bishop of the Yucatan, and he wrote the history of the Mayas of the country, which preserved the manuscript at the Madrid in the library of the Royal Academia of History. It contains a description and explanation of the phonetic alphabet of the Mayas, Landa's manuscript seems to have lain neglected in the library for little or nothing was heard of it until discovered by the French priest Barsul Baruch, who by means of it deciphered the alphabet, and thus the alphabet of the Mayas and the ancient people of the peninsula of Yucatan who claimed their civilization came to the. Oh, wait, we already read it. My fault. So extended to the glyph system employed by those nations in supposing the hieroglyphs writing, I may allow the terms of them being used among the syllabus in the first ages of the flood of the Sabian planet worshippers in the religion of almost every country that was yet inhabited. Sir Henry Rawlins said, so great is an analogy between the first principles of the science of writing as it is appears to have been pursued in Chaldea, as we can actually trace its progress in Egypt, that we can hardly hesitate to assign the original invention of the A periods before the Hamitic race had broken up and divided. It is not to be believed that such an extraordinary system of sounds and signs could have been the invention of any man or of any other once age like all the other acquisitions. It must have been a slow growth in the assertion of ages, and it must have been risen step by step from picture writing through an intermediate condition like that of the Chinese, which each word or thing was representation by a separate sign. The fact that so old of a enlightened of a people as the Chinese, they have reached a phonetic alphabet that gives us some indication of a greatness of the people among whom it was invented, and that the lapse of time before they attained to it, the humble says, according to his views, which the Champillion's great discovery had been gradually adopted regarding the earlier conditions of the development of the alphabetical writing of the Phoenician, as well as the Semitic characters, are to be regarded as a phonetic alphabet that has originated from the pictorial writing as one in which the idea of signification of the symbols and who disregarded and the characters are regarded as mere signs for sounds. It grew thus the Merce, which isolated Egypt, less affected by the particular wants and the tendencies of the commercial enterprise, retained that the hieroglyph systems and they carried it into the marvelous heights of perfection. It must be remembered that some of the letters of the alphabet are inventions of the latter nations. In the oldest alphabet, there was no C, the G taking its place. The Romans converted the G into the C, and then finding necessity for a G sign made by adding the tail piece to the C. The Greeks added to the ancient alphabet of Eusponian space like the V or the Y, two forms being used indefinitely. They added the X sign. They coveted the T of the Phoenicians into the TH and the thala of the Z into the S. Yeah, I think it's an S. Into signs of a double consistent. They turned the Phoenician Y yod into the Gota. This the Greeks converted the Phoenician alphabet, which was partially consistent, into purely phonetic and perfectly instrument for the expression of spoken language. The W was also added to the Phoenician alphabet. The Romans added the Y. At the first, the I and the J were both indicated by the same sound. The sign of the J was afterwards added. We have also, in common with the European language, added the W, or the or that is the double V, or the W, which is represented by the W sound or the W sound. Later, when which we owe the Phoenicians are the A, the B, the C, the D, the H, the I, the K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, and the Z. If we are to trace the remembrance of the alphabet of any of these countries, it must be in the signs. It is in any other country to which we can turn these processed phonetic alphabets into respected kinds of Phoenician alphabets. It cannot be the Chinese alphabet, which has more signs than words. It cannot be the cuneiform alphabet of Assyria, which is 700 arrow-shaped character. Perhaps some of the old American writings, if we compare it to some of the old American writings, he says the alphabet signs explained by Landon have been to me a Rosetta Stone. We were observed in a table of alphabets of different European nations, and I have herewith how greatly formed the Phoenician letters have been modified. It wouldn't surprise us to find that the resemblance between the Maya alphabet of the 2 or 3 centuries since the ancient European forms. It must, however, be remembered that the Maya are one of the most conservative people in the world. They will adhere with striking uh, pertinacity to language they spoke when the Columbus landed in San Salvador, and it is believed that the language is the same as one inscribed on the most ancient monuments of their country. Senor Pimpento says to them that the Indians have preserved this idiom with such tenacity that they will speak no other. It is necessarily for the whites to address them in their own language to communicate with them. It is therefore probable that the alphabet did not pass from nation to nation, as did the Phoenicians, that it is not departed so widely from the original forms received from the Chaldeans. But when we consider the vast extent of the time which has elapsed and the fact that we are probably without the intermediate stages of the alphabet which preceded the archaic Phoenician, it will be astonishing to find a resemblance between any of the Maya letters and the European forms, even though we concede that they are related. If we find decided affinities between the 2 or 3 letters, we are reasonably presume that the similar coincidences existed in many others would have just within to the assertion of the centuries. The Armina letters are an icon written on clay tablets permanently consisting of a diplomatic correspondence between Egyptian administration and representatives of the Canaan of the Amuru and the neighboring kingdom leaders during the New Kingdom between 1360 and 1332. Evidence of the signs of the goddess Tanit must be in the region of Egypt. In recent, we have been increased archaeological evidence of the existence of the Eastern Mediterranean cult of the Phoenician god Tanit. Such evidence consists of a number of objects bearing so-called signs of Tanit sound along with the Levant coast. Several small votive objects made of sandstone and found at the site of the Buncham near the Thebes may be the first indication of the goddess of Upper Egypt during the Ptolemaic period. Accordingly, we found the area lacking specific archaeological context throughout the early form of the incise motifs made indicate the atomic date. Each of the 11 objects are trapezoid in shape, measure 11.5 by 8 centimeters on the average. A variation of Tanit symbols is carved on them a circle on a crossbar over a triangle and a floral spring to the top of the circle. As you see this little sign, we'll see it better on some other stuff. So it's a study of Thranos, and that's to convince any other that learned the author of the book, and no doubt and many of his associates had only a thought knowledge of geographical configurations of the western continent and the adjacent islands, but also the geological formation of the land of the west is represented by the symbol translated as Atlan. And it would be this one over here to the right. They leave no room for the doubting that the Mayas were acquainted with the eastern coast of the said continent from the Bay of St. Lawrence to latitude 48 to the Cape St. Route of Brazil to latitude 528. The two signs that look like the rainbow and the square are localities placed under the symbol represent the two large regions of the western continent, or the northern and South America was the sign of the big circle, and the circle over the crescent seen within the curved figuring of the northern basin of the Atlantic stands as the land of more extensive islands submerged under the waves of the ocean, and the sign as well as the crown of the former upper part of the symbol is familiar to all students of Egyptology. This will tell you that they first met in the Egyptian hieroglyphs at the sun setting on the horizon, and the second is the mountain countries in the west. As to the conventional posture given to all the statues of the rulers of illustrious personages in Mayak, and confirm the fact that the geographical attainments and compare instances of the outlines, the effigies of Prince Cole discovered by the author of Chichen Itza in 1875. Okay, this is the symbol of Tanit. As you can see, we have she said that would be the symbol of America over the top, and this would be the mother down low, or the circle with the line with the triangle at the bottom. Says divination of the goddess Tanit, or Tanit, the presumption of Ashute took place in the Mediterranean cave sanctuaries of the Phoenician ships, employing both material and textual evidence. Is it arguable that her worship at sea as a port required a degree of religious contemporary of seamen that served a crew of combatants, trading vessels, and military vessels, respectively, with the Phoenician priesthood centered in cities. The coastal inhabitants would have depended on part of the Ephesians to supervise and perform certain rites. Reasons for the lack of mention in the literatures of non-elite class are proposed. Basically saying that they hired, it was a secret society. Like I said, getting to America was always something you had to do. You got to know these stories and certain things in order to even be able to be a part of this. They call this the Oak Island Cross. Also, from the Oak Island Cross, we'll notice that this same symbol to Nick is going to be considered the Atlantean Cross when we look it up. This was called the Atlantean Cross. This would be considered an Egyptian ankh. As we see, it has the two legs, which would have, spread out wide enough, because it's just a certain version of it. We have some where the legs are wider. So it's about 11,000 years ago, to about 9,500 BC, our plants were hit with a huge cataclysm when a good part of the world, the Andes, the Cordillera, were raised. The big lake located where today's Sahara Desert existed dried out. The limits of the Mediterranean Sea were altered, and the very large continent island that existed in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, known as Atlantis, sank. The cause of this catastrophe are not completely known yet, but it is believed that one of its probable causes was the arrival of a huge mass of celestial bodies that might have passed near the Earth, provoking tremendous tension and integral magma of the planet. The real magma tides have submitted the thin, solid crust of the planet into a stronger pressure that it could not support it, and many points of the soil became distended, and others it wrinkled. There were furthermore sinking and rising in some other parts of the soil. Atlantis was the main victim of those cataclysms, and that caused the fall of the powerful civilization. It is enough to say that the various ancient texts state that the continent of the island sinking and the survivors went on to Africa. Plato tells us that the conflicts of this they had with the Egyptians, the Greeks, and how the families were defeated, and however they left indelible marks on the ancient people's culture, such as in Phoenician civilization that was a successor of the sea trade. The Phoenicians inhabited the Mediterranean coast and the narrow, fertile strip located between the sea and the mountains of Lebanon and outside Lebanon, the smaller territories that the presence of the powerful neighbors and the existence of much cedar wood, quite good of naval construction, and the mountain forest may have been additional elements that guided the Phoenician civilization towards the exploration of the seas. They built numerous of the powerful fleets. They also visited North African coast, and all the European South traded in Italy, entered the Black Sea, and left the Mediterranean Sea by crossing the Gulf of Hercules, today's Straits of Gibraltar, and previously called the Pillars of Melpart, reaching the Atlantic. America's Sea demonstrated that the cosmic terrors interwoven within the very rap of the wolf of the sacred literature, the Christian and pagans refer to the occurrence of the literally true as the earthquake of Lisbon. These stupendous events bringing connected primarily with the great destruction and recovery of the equilibrium of the solar system. And secondly, with the consequent wrecking of the continents of America, the whole globe became involved in a consequences of disorder of the skies of America. When the ruins befell the seat of the greatest empire that has ever existed, and the irresistible armies of terrorizing all of Europe and Asia, America, when the ruins befell, was the seat of the greatest empire that has ever existed, and its irresistible armies were terrorizing all of Europe and Asia. And America rediscovering in the 15th century and repopulated in the 17th was the recovered the Egypt and the promised the land of the constellation of the eagle, the Aquila or the Egyptus, and the swan, the Cygnus of Canaan or Canada, was placed, will be shown to be fixed in America by the same combination of celestial and terrestrial uh, geography, which gives Russia the bear, China the lion, and British and India the unicorn, and the Great Pyramids of the Pleiades with the constellation of gigantic Bible in stone is directly connected to Herschel, Proctor, Smith, and the other foremost astronomers. This one fact renders the strikingly appropriate that the first parliament of religious in the history of the world should have been held in American soil, and bringing together the brethren long separated upon the identical continents occupied by their common progenitors before the confusion of lips. So they're saying that we will all have these certain traits and stuff that would show that we were of this Atlantean stock or Phoenician stock, whether you were in America, whether you're in Europe, or whether you were in Asia or America. We have to look for these connections that make us family, because we are the guardians of what they would call the world. And we're gonna keep getting into this family business that we're talking about. We have this was an early map of what we would call Pau Brazil, and this was through exploration of Abregio. And we'll see that he was making navigation from Lagos de Patos, library in France. They later just descriptions made it simply between I confirmed that the situation was still the same, and the Cape was an island, since it was a distance and a half league from the land surrounded by the sea. They could still navigate through the passage. The distance between the island and the continent was enough to be concerned by municipalities entered into some enemies occupied the island, and the trade of the Rio de Janeiro and North Brazil could be jeopardized. The Portuguese trade ships, just some early maps that, I said across it to me. We have the South Shore Cove with Nolan's Cross on the swamp and Money Pit. You see the owls, the wings. You see, we had our crescent that they were talking about, the moon and the X. I wouldn't say that's a mountain range to the west, but I'm not going to go there. That's a little bit of a reach. and at least that of those crabs actually reached South America, and the occupants parceled the hookworm on subsequent inhabitants. It says in South America, paleoparasitology developed with the first study conducted in Brazil. It was in 1970, specifically 1978, with Dr. Luiz Fernando Roca Ferreira de Saliba at the Laboratory of Paleoparasitology in Ecuador, Marquez, located in the Department of Biology Sciences, DCB, the National School of Public Health at Sergio Aruca, ENSP, Oswaldo Cruz Foundation of Fiocruz. The paleoparasitology in Brazil included the terms was created. The great interest of paleoparasitologists was whether the parasitic infections had arrived in the Americas with the colonizers and the slaves, or would have already be in the American continent before colonization. The union with Dr. Adalto Jose Goncalves de Rio in 1978 made the paleoparasitology in Brazil take flight in the article by Professor Benjamin Caio Diaz, who defended the autochthonous character Scientismius Menacius, the national territory against the orthodoxy was the runaway takeoff with the paleoparasitology in Brazil. There were no eggs of S. manasoi and carpolites and analyzed. However, there were found hookworm eggs, which were also consisted in port. This okay. However, there were found hookworms eggs, which were consistent imports. This allowed the consider the question of human entry into the Americas in 1972. Forsica already discussed the possibility of infection by hookworm in America pre-Columbian times based on the chronicled documents in the 17th century. The parasitologist test and isolated indigenous tribes without contact with colonizers. This, under orientation of Dr. Luis Fernando Ferreira Adato Adahil, received his master's degree in parasite biology in 1980 by Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, with the study and the contribution to the Hellman study of archaeological material of Brazil. The passage throughout the Bering Strait as the only alternative for human entry into America, as well as hookworm, with a big question being a geoelement need maturation in the soil. Cold temperatures would have destroyed the parasite's eggs. That was the idea defended by Dr. Adolfo Adel, the doctoral thesis of the public health at Oswaldo Cruz Foundation in 1987, with the study of paleoepidemiology of the Achaeoanocytomimesis under the orientation of Dr. Luis Fernando Vieira. These findings suggest, in fact, alternative routes by sea as possibility of human migrations in prehistoric America, making questionable the absolute exclusive you can see it exclusivity of the Bering Strait as the gateway. This is the line whose results are accumulated until the present day, creating a consistent data for discussion about the origins of the population in new territories. Shortly thereafter, Dr. Adalto Hale made a contact with a Canadian studying paleoclimate and confirmed his hypothesis. His famous book for the time, the Kon-Tiki Expedition, where the authors, after consulting with the Indians of Lake Titicaca, built a boat with the methodology of the prehistory and managed to reach the Polynesian, leaving the Americas. Thus, it was confirmed that the possibility of crossing also by sea, although much of the study of the parasites and archaeological material in South America has been made with mummies of the Andean region. The interest also came by the parasites of animals from uh, corporalite studies found by archaeological layers associates with the Dr. Naidi Gudian on the studies of the Serra de Capivara National Park of Piauí, Brazil, is a series of observations came. One of the thatched houses was considered at the time the basis of the Chagas disease. Ali, get back up, Ali. India. Sweet South, Americas, India, some more. Mexican poppy. Okay, I'm not reading those Latin names, but we got the sword bean, jack beans of the America. It moved to Asia. We got the Indian shot from the Americas, moved to India and China. We had the hashish of the Eastern Hemisphere was found in Peru. We have the chili peppers in America found in India and Polynesia. The chili pepper of America is found in India. We got the papaya of the Americas found in Polynesia. We got the kapok silk cotton tree of the Americas found in Asia. We got the Mexican tea and the azapote in the Eastern Hemisphere, and it was moved to Mesoamerica. Coconut from the Eastern Hemisphere moved to Colombia to Mexico. The cannonball tree from the Americas to India. Chalicote from Americas to Asia. The Hubbard squash from America to India to China. The butternut squash from Americas to India to China. Pumpkin from Americas to India to China. Sage from America to Eurasia. Datura Jimson weed from the Americas to Eurasia. The Datura thorn apple from the Americas to Eurasia. Black sapote, Americas, it moved to Eurasia. The coca moved from America to Egypt, the cocaine. Uh, Mangosteen from the Eastern Hemisphere to Peru. A cotton from the Eastern Hemisphere to South Americas. A cotton from Americas to the Marquesa Islands. A cotton gene from Africa to Mexico. A cotton gene from Mexico from Africa to Polynesia. Cotton from America to Hawaii. Sunflower from America to India. Balasir from America to Oceania to Asia. Linden hibiscus from America to Polynesia. Sweet potatoes from America to Polynesia to China. Bottle ground from Americas to Asia to East Polynesia. Rib ground, America. Okay. We'll start at the sweet potato. It came from the Americas. Ended up in Polynesia and China. The rib ground or gourd started in America, ended up in India. The loofah vegetable gourd started from maybe the Americas, ended up in India and China. We had the Fossey bean from the Americas, ended up in India. The manioc started in America, ended up in China. Ended up in the Easter Islands. The arrowroot started in Americas, ended up in the Easter Islands in India. Sensitive plants started in Americas, ended up in India and China, pre-Columbian. 4 o'clock plant started in Americas, ended up in India. Carpet weed started off in the Eastern Hemisphere, ended up in North America. The climate arrow started in America, ended up in India. The mulberry tree supposedly started in the Eastern Hemisphere and ended up in Middle America. The cowhage started in America, ended up in India and Hawaii. But we know the mulberry tree is the tree of America. We know that in the valley makes sense. The banana plantain, Eastern Hemisphere, ended up in tropical America somehow. Bog myrtle, Eastern Hemisphere, ended up here, pre-Columbian in North America. Tobacco from the Americas ended up in South Asia, pre-Columbian. Basil from the Americas ended up in India. Prickly pear cactus from the Americas ended up in India. Um, Jicama from the Americas ended up in Asia. Jicama and the yam bean from the Americas ended up in India, China, and Oceania. Ivy leaf, morning glory. Americas ended up in India and China. Lima bean from the Americas is found pre-Columbian in India. Kidney beans from America found pre-Columbian in India. Ground cherries from the Americas and pre-Columbian China. Husk tomato from the Americas ended up in East Polynesia. Knotweed from the Americas ended up in the Easter Island. Porcelain from America ended up in Eurasia. Guava from America ended up in China and Polynesia. Scarlet salvia from America ended up in Marquise Island. Soapberry from the Americas ended up in India and Eastern Polynesia. Bulrush toro from the Americas ended up in Easter Island. A grass from the Americas ended up in Hawaii. Blue-eyed grass from America ended up in Greenland. Sarsaparilla from Eastern Hemisphere ended up in Central America. Narnahilo from America ended up in Oceania and southeastern Asia. Black nightshade from the eastern hemisphere ended up in Mesoamerica. Potato from America ended up in Easter Island. Sow thistle from America ended up in China. The tamarind tree from America ended up in Easter Island. Marigold from America ended up in India. Dwarf marigold from America ended up in India and Persia. Corn and maize ended up in Eurasia and Africa. It says, we have not treated all the species as equal lengths in the section, with present some equally cognate cases. Data of lesser intent are postponed in the interest of clear presentation to the primary argument. But the appendix we present full data of the possession of every species. The grain Aromathus, I'm not going to say the Latin names, that's too much. Hydroconadalaca, they're doing too much. Are both native to the New World and where they consisted important cereal crops. These plants have been grown for a long time in Asia as well. Some of the significance of the American Asia distribution was first presented by Jonathan Sauer, monograph of the gain of the RMI published in 1950. He concluded on page 613 that there is a great vaguely delineated grain of RMI region stretched all the way from the Manchuria through the interior of China and the Himalayas to Afghanistan and Persia, now known as the blank from Mexico, and the cactus from the Andes are both grown throughout this Asian area. Culinary use were similar in Asia and the Americas. After being parched and popped, the seeds were sometimes made into balls like popcorn using a syrup and other binders of the seeds we ground into flour and stirred into a drink and baked into small cakes. Sauer also observed on page 588 that the crop is scattered so widely throughout Asia that it is so firmly entrenched among the remote peoples that it gives a powerful impression that the great antiquities in the area and the fact it would seem to have been present from the immemorial. Yet the available old world specimens represent nothing but a small sample of diversity present in the American grain. Amaranthus, I can't say that. Hence, the conclusion appears inaccessible that the grain of amaranth in all the New World origins, however, species of that are used to pot herbs and the decoration and are mere weeds. And another matter, they that are grown in Asia are the Asian native. In the later publications, Sauer showed that the reluctance to accept that the early transoceanic contact that this first result implied, although the facts of the matter remained unchanged. In Mesoamerica, the cultivation of the grain amaranth began in the early as the 4000 BC, and the wild species there provided a plausible ancestor to the earliest domesticated amaranth and the the comparable ancestor for the grain amaranth we know from Asia. While grains appear to be historically old in Asia, on the basis of the evidence mentioned by Sauer, exactly when the transfer of the grain from the America area of the origin took place went unspecified in literature for many years. We inspired Dufshinder presented what seems to be a clear reference of the grain amaranth in a Chinese text and the reference of Kui Han, Pin Tao, Ju Han, whatever. The volume included the description of the woodcut illustration of the plant based on the older printed work, plus the author's own observation of the editor. Author of Zhao Ding Wang died in AD 1425, and the source of his citation of Amaranth was documented and written down about AD 950. The Prince of Shu and the modern Sichuans is recognized six kinds of Hin or Xian, a generic name for the group of the related plants of modern record of grain and amaranth from the same area gives the same name. Sowers adds that the pre-Columbian presence of the grain of amaranth in Asia was indicated by the wide distribution and thus confirmed that the 10th century mention of archaeology now is confirmed by a dramatic earlier date for the grain of amaranth in Asia. Seeds of all Cadactus, along with the thorny weed, which also grew in pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, have been excavated in India. The date to the 1000 to 800 BC period at the site of Nathan, such as the date congruent with the distribution evidence in Asia of the interpreted by Sauer. The idea of an early movement of Amaranth into Asia is supported by the information on maize. The primitive maize was found in cultivation in the Himalayas, the country of Sikkim, and botanists judged that the most closely resembled the wild maize of the ancient Mexico, a fossil specimen of which was uncovered in 1960 in the lower levels of San Marcos Cave in the Chihuahua Valley of Mexico. The Gatupa and Jane. The date of the maize in this type of Mexico is not entirely clear. It could be as early as the 5th millennium BC, and it may fall in the 3rd millennium BC. Johnson and McNeish. See more about maize in Asia below. We have seen above from the point of view of the nautical history, we can only not only can we but must think of the watercrafts capable of trans and peri-oceanic sailing as early as this time frame. It is recently years that serious proposals about the early sailing capabilities have been made by archaeologists and others involved in the research on the questions of the early settlements of the America. Some see early sailing to be thoroughly plausible. Centers of Studies of the First Americans in '99, the data of navigation of near oceanic and the Australians have shown that there are uh, speculatory early capabilities to cross the stretches of the ocean in Australia. We reached from the Papua New Guineas to Timor, perhaps more than 50,000 years ago. The Solomon Islands were habited nearly 29,000 years ago, before present, after an open sea crossing. So, what's the big deal? Like, why don't you just tell your girlfriend the truth? Well, I'm just afraid, I guess. I mean, what if she hates clocking and totally rejects me? Look, if she really loves you, then maybe she'll love everything about you, even the clock. You really think so? I mean, I hope so. No matter what happens, it's gonna be better than spending the rest of your life living a lie. You're perfect just as you are. Wow! You must have like zero problems in your life. Yeah. Something's up, ain't it? We need to turn around. I need to go back. Well, then they just put the old turn signal on.
Are you okay? I'm fine, Otis. I'm fine. I've just been so worried about you. But I don't deserve it. I should have never left you guys. It's okay, you're back now. No, it's not okay. I screwed up big time. I thought being a unicorn would make all my dreams come true. Instead, I lost the people who love me the most. Stop it, Dylan. You're making me blush. No, seriously. I'd be happy playing music anywhere. As long as it's with you. Thanks, Selma. You were right all along. I've got to come clean now. Wait, are you serious? It's time to show everyone who the real them is. Wear this bad boy again? Get that nasty thing out of my face. I'm so sorry. I never should have left you. Don't worry about it, kid. I knew you'd come around. I'm sure you've already heard it. I'm not really a unicorn. Yeah, I smell paint on you everything. Come on, everyone. Sparkle Blues is back again, and no one's stopping us from getting on that stage. Hey, I think you're gonna need this. It's your car right here. It's your car.
All right, y'all. I feel like this one was long enough. We're gonna get back in later. We're gonna tap in with the, some more of the symbolism. Neo Hittites and BCE and Ramses. We're gonna get back into part two.